Now, Fox News has been talking about no-go zones for a while. They made up this thing about how in different parts of Europe, including the UK and France, there are these areas that you cannot enter. Now, they got into a little bit of trouble when they started this with this guy, Steve Emerson, who claims to be a terrorist expert. And then he said the entire city of Birmingham is a no-go zone and non-Muslims are not allowed to enter. Now, that's ridiculous. 78% of the city is non-Muslims. Of course they're allowed to enter. Even David Cameron in the UK, the Prime Minister, said that he spit out his porridge when he heard that. Absurd, right? So now Le Petit Journal in France is going to get in on the fun here. It's a television show, and they're actually going to go to the no-go zones. But first you have to understand the context. So recently, this is what happened on Fox News.
But is France fueling the rise of radicalism by allowing no-go zones in Muslim neighborhoods? Did you know that some folks are actually walking around wearing Bin Laden T-shirts? And there, they make their own rules. Our next guest knows firsthand simply that. He's been to those no-go zones. Joining us now is Nolan Peterson, a journalist and veteran, knowing the area quite well. So you spent some time there. What did you see?
Well, it was pretty scary. And I've been to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kashmir, India. And at times it felt like that, those places in the banlieue, in these no-go zones. You see young men wearing Osama bin Laden T-shirts in a hookah shop. I saw a speech by Abu Musab al-Zarqawi, who was leading an insurgency against American troops in Iraq at the time. And it seemed very mainstream and very accepted. This is the efforts of Islamists like the Muslim Brotherhood or Al-Qaeda to recruit off the streets of the no-go zones is not something that's hidden in the shadows. It's actually very open and it's accepted, and people just sort of go along and let this be the status quo.
Very open and accepted. Everybody in those areas knows that this is what happens. The Muslims have taken over those areas. They claim that there are 741 no-go zones. Now, we're going to see those areas in a minute. Let me also give you one more fact that Fox News threw out there. They said that 16% of France supports ISIS. 16% of France supports ISIS. How insane do you have to be to believe that? And of course, the Washington Post debunked that. I like that they went through the effort of debunking. Of course, that's not true. It's not remotely true now. But is it true that there are areas in and around Paris that no non-Muslim can enter? They're wearing the Bin Laden shirts. Well, this is where we go to Le Petit Journal. They did a brilliant story on this. I love their music. Pay attention to the subtitles in English, obviously, so you can see what people are saying. This is wonderful.
Pour vous qui connaissez Paris, voici la carte que les Américains ont vue. Les zones interdites à Paris. Vous avez tout le quartier au sud du boulevard Magenta et la place de la République, interdit d'accès. Ou encore ici le quartier de Belleville à côté du Père-Lachaise, trop dangereux pour y aller. Je vois que certains ici connaissent Paris. Voici les zones interdites de Fox News.
Vous le définiriez comment ce quartier?
Quartier pas cher, sympathique, c'est tout, vraiment. Moi je fais mes courses ici.
On est à Belleville, il y a des juifs, il y a des arabes, il y a des chinois, il y a des chrétiens, il y a des athées, il y a tout.
Est-ce que vous avez déjà vu des jeunes avec des t-shirts Ben Laden dans le quartier?
Non. PSG, Marseille, oui.
Est-ce que c'est un quartier qu'on pourrait comparer à l'Irak ou l'Afghanistan?
Du tout.
Est-ce qu'on pourrait comparer ce quartier avec l'Afghanistan ou l'Irak?
Non, pas du tout. On est quand même en France. Hein.
Est-ce que c'est un quartier que l'on pourrait comparer à l'Irak ou l'Afghanistan?
Non, c'est ridicule.
Vous le définiriez comment ce quartier?
Il est cool, hein, pas de problème, au calme. Il fait bon vivre ici. Depuis que je suis petit, j'habite ici, il n'y a pas eu de problème, c'est cool ici.
Est-ce que c'est un quartier qui pourrait ressembler à l'Afghanistan ou à l'Irak?
Non, je suis choquée. Alors là, votre question, excusez-moi, mais elle est un peu stupide là. Non, pas du tout.
I love every piece of that. Of course, you can't not love the woman at the end who says, your question is stupid. See, here's what you have to understand. The entire channel of Fox News over here in the United States is stupid. That you think this is an aberration. This is what they do. I'm going to show you that it's not an aberration in a second. But my favorite were the lovely women in that lovely cafe. They look around like, Iraq or Afghanistan? Look at the cafe we're in. But isn't that amazing that Fox News brings on experts to say, oh, yeah, no, nobody can enter. No, you can't enter unless you're a hardcore Muslim in these no-go zones. Now, you think that it was just Steve Emerson or this journalist? I like when they say, here's a guy who's a journalist. Okay, if you say so, right? So, it's not an aberration. We're going to show this to you one more time. Okay, none of what you're about to see is a repeat. These were all individual times they said this. This is what Fox News does professionally. They are professional liars. Now, you just saw that I got this proven. Listen to how many times they referenced it.
No-go zones. No-go zones. So there are no-go zones.
No-go zones.
No-go zones.
No-go zone means
The no-go zone.
No-go zones.
750 no-go zones.
The no-go zones.
No-go zones.
No-go zones. No-go zones.
No-go zones.
No-go zones.
Will there be no-go zones here? Are they there now? No-go zones.
We keep talking about the no-go zones in France here.
Are these no-go zones?
They live in the no-go zones. The no-go neighborhoods and no-go zone.
No-go zones.
No-go zones.
No-go zones.
The no-go zones.
No-go zones.
These 751 no-go areas.
No-go zones. No-go zones.
No-go zones.
No-go zone.
You have no-go zones.
A no-go zone. These are no-go zones. In these no-go zones, no-go zones, no-go zones. No-go zones is no-go zones. The no-go zones. The no-go zones. No more no-go zones.
No-go zones. I think they've reached critical mass, frankly. And I've said this before. I think Europe is finished.
I'm looking forward to the report from Le Petit Journal on whether Europe is actually finished. This is what we got to deal with every day, man. That was just over the span of a couple of days they did that. You think they're done? They're not done. They're talking about no-go zones right now. They're not embarrassed by any of this. This is what they do for a living. It's amazing the mountain of misinformation that they put out. And here in America, they're treated seriously, like they're a real news channel. By the way, if you don't know why, it's because a lot of people in television news look forward to working at Fox News one day, or they already work there. So when you get a paycheck from those guys, all of a sudden you say, well, of course they're doing news. How dare you say that? The reality is, of course, that Fox News is a no-go zone for real news.